I'm Richard Gayton. I'm a former Navy psychologist, Army officer, writer, filmmaker, a lot of stuff. And we're really pleased today to have Mitch McDonald with us today, who's normally our producer, but also a screenwriter and an actor. So we welcome him and welcome to Halo, Love, and Country. We've been talking about the risks that LGBTQ people go through in joining the military, from just actually being military folks and the inherent risks of being in the military to the special problems of and threats to them from being LGBTQ. Today, we're going to talk about a broader threat. As a military officer, I took an oath twice to uphold the Constitution. I signed on to defend all of us and to be committed to the well-being of everybody in this country. And I think that's under threat now. There's many different risks now that have come from, what do you call it? I I would call it kind of a repressive environment that has seems to be threatening our basic freedoms, our basic well-being, our basic economic equality in many, many different ways. But that's what I hope we're going to talk about today. And I think Mitch has some very unique insights on this too. So, what are we talking about today, Mitch? What do you think?
Well, the only part of that I would disagree with, I would say that we are looking at the rise of an authoritarian regime that is doing its best to strip away everything democratic in this country in favor of uh, uh, feeding the rest of us into a machine that then feeds into a very narrow top 5% of the country uh, gaining and retaining control. We've watched our once independent judiciary hand over its power to the Trump White House as of, I guess that was Friday. Watched them hand over huge amounts of power to the executive branch in the last year of Biden's term, which Biden did nothing with, to include rejecting it and getting Congress to write very specific directives and amendments to remove that. And now we have a new guy in there absolutely tearing apart the entire underpinning and basis of this country. It's bad, and it's only going to get worse.
And going back to my point, I'm not sure how much we disagree, but I think you put it more forcefully and more clearly. To me, this is a violation of constitutional government. It's a violation of the oath I took. It's a violation of the oath the commander in chief took. If we start to concentrate power in one man, and it's been going on for several presidencies too. We've been concentrating power in the presidency, and the Congress
Yes.
has been giving up its role in many ways. And now we have one party controlling all sections of government, including the Supreme Court. Um, and this, and I think to your point, this is making for massive um, concentration of wealth in the upper 5%. And every now and then there's a bright light in the midst of the darkness. The gentleman that was elected, or at least in the primary for New York, seems to want to provide more equality and um, more, what's the word? Allowing it to be easier for people to live in the lower 90% of the country, whatever that is, lower 90%.
The
They might
majority.
actually, they might not be able to afford the rent. They might be able to get food for their children. They might be able to have health care, those kind of things. But let's look at one by one. Why don't you pick one of these? Where's one of these risks to the Constitution? And let's spend some time on it. See what you and I know about it.
Okay. Well, then let's immigration in general, and because I feel like there's all kinds of room for disagreement on immigration. We who's supposed to be here, how much leeway we give. Like right now, we're only going to get rid of the bad ones. We're only going to get rid of the criminals, and that's always been an argument that criminals are given due process, even when it seems like everything is clearly telling us that they have broken the law. We walk through the process before we put someone out of the country. Um, and whether or not you agree or disagree with that, that's the Constitution. That is, all people are given due process. It's not a question of all people we like or all people that don't seem like really bad guys. It's all persons have recourse to due process under the Constitution. Um, and what we're doing now is not only denying people due process and shipping them out of the country as fast as we can, but we're shipping out of the country to places they may never have been. Uh, I don't know if it was this week or last week, but it was revealed we've made deals with multiple other countries, including a couple of very dangerous African countries, to just ship people off to. And as we've already also established, we've got almost 100 U.S. citizens that have been taken up by ICE who could very easily find themselves in a foreign country uh, in extreme danger with very little knowledge or recourse.
A direct violation of the Constitution. It seems like denying.
Seems like his way too forgiving. It's what they have done.
That's my nature, I guess. My nature is to some extent soft pedal things, and hoping for compromise, like hoping against hope that the current party in power will compromise. And yet I have found that's kind of the liberal approach. We'll try to compromise, try to make a deal. You go halfway, we go halfway. Well, there is no going halfway now. All the
Yeah,
halfways are gone. Did you hear today? Tom Tillis is not going to run for the Senate in North Carolina because I think because he's too moderate, and I always saw him as kind of a hardcore conservative fellow, but he if you don't do it our president's way, it's the highway. It's
right.
there doesn't seem to be any compromise, um, and so one of maybe we can blame to some extent the problem on the liberals' willingness to compromise and soft pedal the steady rise of authoritarianism in the country. And there has been a steady rise of it. And it's if you look at the president's actions, they're the playbook of I don't want to put down the South Americans, but of a South American dictator. He's El Cadillo. Um, and yeah, the liberals kind of we whined and complained, but we did a lot of compromising with them.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
maybe there's going to be maybe we need a new politics. In the 60s, the regular system wasn't working. In 1960s, there were so many changes facing the conservative establishment, and there needed to be new voices and new leaders and younger leaders, and people stuck their necks out, and then we saw people getting killed. We saw people getting assassinated, in the 60s.
Right.
But we're coming, we saw Martin and Medgar Evers and um, John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, all murdered. Gandhi was murdered. Um, but we need new leaders now, ones that probably are not going to compromise. I not soft pedal it the way I was doing, because I don't want it to be true. I don't want to believe we've got an authoritarian government, but of course we do. Yeah.
Well, and like you were just pointing out with Thune, um, uh, he stood up against the big beautiful bill, and they said they were going to primary him, and he's decided rather than he's not even going to bother to run again. But at the same time, I think they put their foot in it by doing that, because now he has absolutely no reason to play their game their way.
Hmm.
He is against this, and he can be 100% against them for the remainder of his time in office. They only had a 3 vote window to begin with, and now they're at a 2 vote window. Uh, my memory says that when they started this process, they had 15 Republicans who were standing there basically just saying, this is financially unsound, unreasonable, not what we should be doing. Um, and that has backpedaled all the way to 2, because they've apparently just promised everybody everything they want so long as they vote on it, rather, as long as they vote on it without taking anything out. Um, the only one that right off the top of my head, I can pull up is that, uh, uh, and I believe it's Josh Hawley out of Missouri, has said that his state was promised an increase in their Medicaid money for the next 10 years. So, fuck 49 other states and everyone living in them. His state will be okay for 10 years. What happens at the end of 10 years? And that even assumes that they do that. They actually live up to the agreement that they made,
Yeah, if
and
that
they don't just
agreement,
turn around.
well, if that agreement even makes it through when the House and the Senate get together and reconcile the two bills, that may be gone. You never know.
Yeah,
It,
yeah, very good point.
I mean,
But it
it
doesn't
may get
change.
cut out.
Yeah,
And
but one way or the
and
other, they have moved it through.
yeah, and you can cover it all with the big lie and just say it ain't happening. Yeah, we're not
But
going
it
to
was
cut
never
Medicaid.
promised.
Yeah, we're not going to increase the deficit because the deficit, we're going to redefine the deficit as something other than a deficit. And, it's like, well, it's like the emperor has no clothes. Everybody pretends all the folks in that other party pretend it ain't happening. And they know it's happening. They know they're going to put 10 million people off of Medicaid. They know that, uh, well, what else is going to happen? We're going to have this another huge budget deficit. I mean, I guess that's to me, one of the main risks we're headed for the next generation. Maybe not so much for us. We can keep running up the, national Visa card. We just keep running it up, keep making the monthly payments, let the interest rate get higher, whatever it's going to take. And pretty soon I'll be dead and you'll be old. And then the children won't be able to handle the payments on the debt. And what we
Yeah,
do is, what happens then? We lose the ability. People won't want to loan us money anymore, not at the current rates. The interest rates will go up. That'll take more money out of the budget, the federal budget. It's a huge risk, and I think it means the eventual insolvency of the federal government, which seems to me that's kind of what's wanted, because the federal government was protecting us all these last 40, 50 years, various ways, not perfectly. They were trying to do racial equality. They were letting gay and lesbian people marry. They were welcoming people from 130 countries, trying to integrate them, assimilate them, help them be part of the whole system here. They had a safety net for for people that couldn't afford our freaking medical system. You know, we had all that. That's changing now. I think what you're saying is it's gone. I don't know. What do you think?
It's not gone, but it is rapidly vanishing, and the only thing between us and it vanishing are a building full of ineffective legislators and the active resistance of the American public. Because like I can all day long blame Biden for having done nothing, and the current Schumer is just a soggy cheese sandwich, just completely worthless. Um, and I can lay blame at their door all day long, but when it also comes down to it, like I have called the offices of my two trash bag senators, Womack and Cotton. Um, Cotton is 100% complicit in this, and Womack is another one of those go along to get along sort of senators. There was a time when he stood for something. That time is long past. And I have called their offices, but I live in an absolutely red state. I live just south of what is called Northwest Arkansas, which is really just like a 10% sliver on the edge of the state that is quite blue. They have very progressive tendencies up there. Um, and there are even a couple of pockets that are damn near communist. Uh, but there are also a couple of pockets of bright red racism. Harrison, Arkansas, is the first one that comes to mind. They had KKK billboards up there as recently as 10 years ago. Uh, which, and in that context, that's absolutely what America is about. If you want to put up your KKK billboard, you're absolutely allowed to do that. The fact that an advertising agency in the city was willing to accept it 100%. This is America. You can hate anybody you want to hate as long as you want to hate them. That is absolutely your right to hate them for absolutely no logical reason.
Oh,
No
well, as
logical
Trump would say, there's some very good people in the
on book.
KKK.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, they're
it's a really, it's a very civic oriented, community oriented organization. Um, they dress neatly in robes. Um, they're they they have celebrations with fire. No, it's coming back to me. I'm living in Cerritos. This is when I was a Navy psychologist. Living in a nice lily white neighborhood although we had some Asian folk there. Black family moves in across the street, and somebody burns a cross in their lawn. I mean, you'll have, and this is California. You'll have to appreciate the creativity of the Klan. You know, they're and they're not just in Arkansas. That's the problem. They're all over.
um, but yeah, we have to, at some point, we're going to have to step in and start doing something more than complaining that the Democrats aren't doing anything. They're not, but we have to start taking a more active hand. And the first place that should have shown up was when ICE started running around in the streets wearing masks, not properly identifying themselves, pretending that their warrants gave them legal access in places they did not, and lying about it as if, because
Well,
we don't know, so what they said must
it's
be true.
exactly my point. You see, where did they learn to wear masks?
Um, and but that would be irrelevant if they wore proper insignia,
Hmm.
showed proper identification, if they did their job in the way that we expect them to do it, rather than on the authoritarian playbook that they have just stepped into. I keep waiting, and it's happened a couple of times, but it doesn't happen often enough. I keep waiting for that crowd to show up and just physically separate them from the person they're trying to get to. 10 ICE agents are not going through a crowd of 300 people. They're just not. And if the 300 people don't allow anybody in their crowd to be taken, because actually they can't. If ICE shows up and you interfere with them, they don't have any ability to arrest you. They have to call the local police to have the local police clear all 300 of you off the lawn. And if you're not moving off the lawn, the local police should understand that their citizenry doesn't want this. And not that that's appropriate. The law is the law, and the police should not be
But
set back just because.
there's another problem. What do you do when the police stop obeying the law? It was the same problem with the George Floyd murder. It was a problem of Kent State in the 60s when the National Guard came to a campus and for some reason, a bunch of 19-year-olds with guns opened fire on protesters, killed 4 of them. What? And it goes on and on and on when the police don't follow the law. What we usually do is we apply the law to them, which we try to do, which I think is a
Right.
really helpful thing to do. It changed the LA Police Department. Finally, we had a real problem with cowboys in the LA Police Department. We probably still do in places. There's gangs of police and stuff like that.
Well, but the situation there is it is what I was looking up just then. So it was in 2014 that the Supreme Court said police officers don't have to know the law as long as they feel like the law says something like what I'm doing. They're always justified in whatever actions they take. That is Hine versus North Carolina in 2014.
Wow.
But even before that, they are allowed to enforce the law in the way that they see fit. If they find you in the possession of drugs under a certain weight, even if they know 100% that you have cocaine on you, you have crack on you, you have meth on you, you have marijuana on you, as long as it is under a certain amount, they're 100% allowed to just ignore that you had it. And let's skip over that. Forget about what we expect from them. We always know when a cop pulls you, he can do what he wants. Hey, man, that looks like an open beer bottle in your back seat. You know that's not legal in this state, right? You can't roll down the road with an open container. I'm gonna need you to pour that out, just so I know, you're not drinking it. It's not a big deal. I just need you to ditch it. Cool. You play ball with the cops can play ball with you. And when they roll up on scene and they see 300 people separating ICE from one sad, crying human being, or one very stoic, tired human being, or one very angry human being, they 100% have the ability to say, listen, guys, that's a whole lot of people, and we're not going to try to start any trouble today. Why don't you get back in your cars, head on somewhere else, do something somewhere else. This guy is not yours to. And better than that would be if the ICE agents took off their fucking masks, handed the police a warrant that says this is a judicial warrant for that man's arrest, that person's arrest. Because like what we're upset about isn't that people are being deported, as the right is constantly pointing out to me, particularly lately. More people were deported under Obama than Trump is deported. Yeah, you know why? Because they did it legally. They followed the rules and they removed people that needed to be removed. The resistance right now isn't because we think people shouldn't be deported. It's because you're not doing it the right way. You're endangering citizens. You're endangering the immigrants. You're endangering people who wander by when you start this crap. And you're creating a context of lawlessness that we don't want. But if the only thing you can do is to resist the system, the only thing you can do is resist the system. And we're rapidly moving toward that. And Thune is an example of that. He has accepted that
We're
the
talking about
only
Tillis,
way,
right? Tom Tillis,
excuse me,
North
Tom Tillis,
Carolina, right? Yeah, okay.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting. Tom Tillis, Republican, North Carolina. As you said, he has agreed that he's not going to run again because they've already said that they were going to push him out. So now he's going lawless. If you're not going to work with me, I have no reason to work with you. He's now a speed bump for them that they didn't have
They've
before.
lost
They
it,
created,
yeah.
yeah. And unfortunately, my long story short, point is that's what all of us need to be doing. We all need to be making this as difficult as possible for them, and we're not.
All right. So when I go to a little organization called Invisible 45 demonstrations here in Orange County. No Kings was here in Orange County. These are totally nonviolent, the ones I go to. And there's no ICE agents around. The police come by. Everybody makes a lot of noise. There's a lot of honking, but not much is happening. I mean, that's something, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much it's changing anything. But then I see in Los Angeles, the residents will go out and do what you're saying. They'll get between ICE and the house where they're raiding, or they will try to interfere with ICE making an arrest. Should that be what we're doing? It's always been a difficult thing for me, because I've always felt like the police were on my side because they usually were. Um, when they're not, what is our duty to the Constitution? What is our duty as citizens when this is going on?
So I think the simplest truth there is that there's a reason we have a right to bear arms, and this actually is it. Um, when we look back at the January 6th insurrection, I 100% do not agree with what they did, but I don't agree with what they did for the reason they did it. They were being lied to. They chose to believe that lie because there was no end of information that any rational human being could have looked at what they were being told and gone, okay, that's not founded.
No, they wanted to believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted to believe it, and they
They didn't
chose
show
to
it.
act on it. And it
Right.
went directly against everything they stand for. It went directly against everything they support. They attacked the government. They attacked police officers, and then they completely disrespected the Capitol building while they were inside shitting in
And
people's
people died.
offices,
5.
and people died as a result of their actions.
Right.
And as I said, I'm against it because of the reason. Quite literally, they saw what they felt was a wrong in the U.S. government, and they stood up to the government to see it corrected. And that is what we are asked to do as citizens. Our government has to know that its control begins and ends at our feet. They also, for a short while, paid for the decision they made. And that's the other side. That's the hard part. That's always the hardest part. Standing up for what you believe in and accepting the repercussions.
It ain't free. There's gonna be consequences. Right.
There's going to
Yeah.
be consequences. And they did that. So, I can be unhappy with the decision they made, but I 100% have to shine a spotlight on they did what we are asked to do as citizens of the United States in the face of a tyrannical government. And what we have now is a rapidly developing tyrannical government. And at some point, we have to stand up. We have to stand in the way. I don't want it to be about bloodshed. But if that's the way it goes, that is the way it goes. And we have seen that they aren't really afraid to do that harm. We haven't. I mean, we haven't literally seen people being shot yet, but the trauma we are doing to children, to families, to individuals, the fear we are generating in the country is going to undermine our government and our citizenry and our sense of nation for another 50 or 60 years. Even if we can correct the current problems like with the big beautiful bill and put in corrections to put the judiciary and the executive back in their respective boxes, unless we do a really good job of that, we're always going to be looking over our shoulders. We're always going to be waiting for the next president to come in and try to upend things. We've had almost 250 years of doing it right. I don't know why now is the time, other than if you read the material, they say nations on our level generally don't last more than 200 years.
Well, I'm not sure we had 250 years of doing it right. I think what we've had is periods of time when we tried to reduce inequality,
Yes, yes.
periods of time when we attempted to help people. Well, during the Great Depression, there was just years and years where really nothing was done, as the stock market collapsed, we had 25% unemployment during the 29 and 30 and 32 and all that, those three few years. And the government really did nothing. It failed us. And in 1860, when Lincoln was trying to save the Union, supposedly, the government failed. It couldn't bridge the gap between our commitment to slavery, and so we fell into violence. And in the 1960s, now 100 years later, we fell into violence again during the Vietnam War. We were busy killing people in Vietnam, and the population turned against it. And the population finally turned against the government, and there was a great deal of violence. And is that what we're headed for, do you think?
We're definitely headed for that. We're definitely
Okay.
headed for that because again, it is supplied for in the Constitution as a
But it means
slight
taking the
rewording.
consequences if we fight over it. Yes.
Well, and there's consequences if we don't fight. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, and it's a question of what do you want at the other end of it. And a lot of the people who are defending the current Republican position, they don't want a dictatorship. That's not what they want, but they don't understand that that's what they're creating. They think Trump and his people are going to make a better world for everybody by getting rid of all the libs and their rules and their expectations. And we've already seen what happens when you start pulling those rules and expectations out. It's not that those rules were excessive. It's that we have shown when those rules aren't in place, we are excessive. There is a reason that we don't let you just build willy-nilly, because if we let you, you will trample over everyone who is anywhere near you with your building. In the 1800s, people would just claim the land all the way up to the headwater and then chop that off and then just say everybody who's touching water below me is touching my water. Or I could
That's
just
a good
dam it
point.
right at the source and nobody is allowed to have anything. I've got all the water. We had to make rules to take that away from people. Not because we want to. We want people to be able to take reasonably, and people do not take reasonably. Right now, what we are seeing is people who do not know how to take reasonably. Um, we've got people using the system against the entirety of the rest of the country. So the point is, it's not what the Republicans want. I know 90% of my Republican friends do not want a dictatorship. But again, they do not understand that that is what they are creating. By taking basic rights away from one group, you simply create the first rung in the ladder toward taking them away from the next group and the next group and the next group until nobody has any rights who isn't specifically on the good side of the government.
I think you're right. I don't think they want a dictatorship, but I think they have a sense of victimhood that the liberal elites, the somehow they've got a boogeyman in that they've caused this, and now they're justified. They're justified in becoming authoritarian, and they probably some of them belong to authoritarian organizations within the community. Some churches are very authoritarian. Most are not, but many are very, we tell you what to do. We know what God wants. You have to do it. And that gets carried on into the political sphere. But it's also not knowing about what democracy is, sometimes not paying attention during a civics class, being bored with it, or being impatient with how difficult democracy is. But that all that is leads to rejecting of democratic institutions where you have to share power.
Well, 100%. But the other side of that coin is the Republicans have gone out of their way to make sure that happened. It is the Republican organizations that have steadily reduced the amount of money we could put into education and fed the removal of basic classes like civics and American government classes. When I was in college 6 years ago, 3 years ago, not terribly long ago, I was in college. I took a civics course. I took an American government course just to reinforce the knowledge. The woman teaching this class was basically playing Schoolhouse Rock videos, which Schoolhouse Rock is fantastic, but not for college. And then when she got past Schoolhouse Rock videos, she literally, like the one thing I remember best is there was a section of the book where we started talking about how you make laws in the United States of America, and the idea that as citizens we are capable of moving laws up to the federal level, um, uh, by pushing votes into the Capitol and then forcing votes that then go to, because like it's 2/3 of the states vote for something, and that can then be transferred to Congress to be voted on. And what she said when we got to that point of it was, this never happens, so we don't even need to talk about it. It is a basic right, a grassroots function of being a citizen of this nation, that if you can get people behind you, you can get laws changed. And she just wanted to gloss over that. And then when we got past that, she showed us a movie. It's a Mel Gibson movie called The Patriot. That is what she held up as an example of U.S. government and the fight for power. A Mel Gibson movie that has nothing to do with reality. That is the sort of trash you can expect in a lot of aspects of education. And the fact that no one, as far as I know, I'm the only person in that class that went to anyone and complained. I think for the most part, they were just happy to have an easy class. They weren't taking American government for the sake of learning anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have bred a couple of generations of people who don't know that they need to know, and that responsibility
They may not
still
even
falls
know.
back.
They may not understand the system well enough to even to exert their rights in it and to use the system effectively to represent their communities and themselves. They may just be ignorant of all of that.
Yes, they are. They feel that things are wrong, but a lot of the things that they are bothered by aren't right or wrong. It's just inconvenient to your life. Um, as one of the best examples, a lot of red states are doing this. They're moving public funds into private education. And what they've done in the process of doing that is made it extremely easy for any student to drop out and just say, I'm being homeschooled. They're not being homeschooled. They're not being taught anything. They're not advancing themselves. And they will continue to complain that the world is an oppressive place that keeps them down, despite the fact they don't know how to read. They have the attention span of fleas. Their math skills are abysmal. And their basic knowledge of how society and government work comes down to inconveniencing me. And they can't even use a multisyllabic word to say this is inconvenient. All they can say is, why are you messing with me? Why are you always messing with me? Well, because you're breaking the rules. Well, I don't even know why that's a rule. Because if everyone ran around doing what you do all day long, nothing would get done. Everything would be broken. You're here to learn. I don't want to learn none of this. Okay, don't learn it. Sit down and shut up. You're going to be here 8 hours a day anyway. Maybe if we're lucky, you'll accidentally learn something, or we'll find some way to engage you and bring you back in. But if you want to grow up illiterate, unable to calculate your own paycheck, unable to pay your own bills, we're at a point where that's just acceptable. And now to come back full circle, and the Republicans created this problem. They created this problem by trying to cut out all the standardizing, not standardizing, but the regulation.
Yeah,
They
the
were constantly trying to.
the requirements for literacy, the requirements for civics, the requirements to learn critical thinking. These are, yeah, basic stuff.
Yeah,
And
they,
they would say,
they
oh
called
no, we're
it.
teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. And if you're a Christian homeschooler with fundamentalist Christian parents, you probably are learning to read. And you probably are learning, but you're not learning anything else. You're
So
not
you're
learning
certainly
about
not
the book.
learning to question or think.
No, you better not learn to question.
Yeah, and
I would have
and they
preferred
call
my
it
children to learn to question and think, actually, when they were
right, right,
until they
and they
got
call it
older, and then I encouraged
right,
it.
and they call it indoctrination. But we're now at a point where in Oklahoma, right next door, they have already required that the Ten Commandments be posted in every classroom, not in every school, in every classroom, and that you then have classes about how the Bible associates to American history, and that we apparently can't stop that. I mean, I know there are suits in motion, but that shouldn't even it should never have come to pass. Just as a basic standard of the Constitution, we know that never should have come to pass. And the fact that we now have to walk through it in the courts is absolutely ridiculous. And if you want to talk about indoctrination, that is exactly what that is. If they had said, we are going to talk about religion because a spiritual life is important and being able to see beyond yourself, beyond the physical world is important. To be able to think in terms of purity of soul is important. And so we're going to talk about religions around the world and how they achieve that goal. No one would even have an argument to make. They might say, well, I would like to be there in the classroom when you talk about my religion. I would like to be there to see how you're teaching my religion to your students. If anything, you at that point need to invite the community in and be like, next week we're doing Muslims. Next month we're doing Sufis. The month after that, we're going to Wiccans. If you would
But
like to
that's
speak
not
to the class
allowed.
about these things, I don't know that that's not even not allowed. I think if you had a special speaker come in and speak to your class, the school would roll with that. I think the school would roll
It
with
would be
that.
allowed in California, but would it be allowed in Arkansas? You think so?
It depends on your school. It depends on your
Depends on your
school.
teacher too, probably, huh?
Well, yeah, it depends on your teacher caring about their material and caring about a broad view as opposed to a degree indoctrination. I understand it. I'm going to tell you what to know. Shut up and listen. Just memorize this, and you're going to be okay. Not that that isn't occasionally needed.
Well, we've talked about the risk and what's happening, and we've touched a little bit on what can be done. But let's focus on that now. What can people of goodwill do in this situation where we have the rise of an authoritarian government? What should we be doing? For me, my approach is to give money to lawsuits that are challenging the government, but those may be relatively ineffective. I don't know. We're seeing
They're
that
guaranteed to be ineffective now since the
district,
Supreme Court
yeah,
handed down the ruling on Friday that national injunctions are no longer allowed.
street demonstrations. I'm starting to do that. How far do we go? What 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 is our requirement as citizens to stop this? We're going to vote for sure. If young people will
Assuming they
vote,
allow us to vote.
yeah, there's the problem too. If you don't bring the proper ID, you may not get to vote, or you may get just deleted from the voter rolls. I don't know. I don't know how much that's happening. I suspect it is. Yeah. How far do we go? What should we be doing? James Carville says an uprising is coming. What will it look
Um,
like?
this is why we need a third voice on the panel. I don't know the right answer because for me we've already stepped beyond the part where you have a reasonable conversation. We've stepped beyond the part where as citizens of the United States we discuss the law. We discuss the process forward. And then when it doesn't go our way, we accept that there will be another day for that battle.
Maybe
Okay, not another day.
that day is
Here,
past, or that day ain't
well,
coming.
here's why that day isn't coming. I said that there'll always be another day to fight that battle, but that's not true. There are some things that some people in this country don't agree with that are bedrock. And immigration is one of those things. They feel like they need to be able to shove around, steal from, use, and abuse anybody who is not a citizen of this country any way they want to. And it angers them that people get in the way of their ability to do that because them foreigners don't deserve nothing, no how,
Well, they just
and
all
because
they
that
are.
is well, hold on,
They're
hold on, hold on. Because
yeah.
that is bedrock, they're not good. They were never going to get their way on that. And the only way they managed it was to go in and subvert the system and take it from a basic function of the Constitution and start twisting the laws until we have a bunch of sycophants. Five out of nine, five out of five, five out of nine judges on the Supreme Court, basically making decisions from their religion and their allegiance to a particular political body rather than on the Constitution and law as we know it. We're in a completely different battle now because it's not about what's
What do we
legal or
do?
constitutional. It's
What
about what do I personally think is right and wrong, and how hard am I willing to fight to make that happen. So, for me, those Second Amendment rights, as we started this conversation at, those are going to come into play, and we're
we
in the
all get
wrong
a
stage.
gun?
Say
We
again?
all we all get a gun?
Um, no, no, because everybody doesn't want to fight. Everybody that wants to fight can get a gun.
You think we're headed for that though? That's where we're going.
Oh, we have been headed for that since Trump's first term. He
Hmm.
has been pushing us in that direction since his first term. And if he hadn't, if he had not been elected this term, we would still be on that track. It would just be a little further away. Because, like, I mean, if he had lost this one, they would have claimed that they were robbed, it was stolen from them. Y'all need to stand up and take back our country because these libtards are in here with their thumb on the scale and blah 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 blah. And there would have been, and the fight would have started there. Um,
It feels like we're having that conversation between Martin Luther King and the Black Panther said we needed to take action. And they had guns and they fought it out with the police. And Martin went the peaceful route mostly. And what happened?
well,
It was the
for
Black
me,
Panther. They inspired they inspired action. So did Martin, but Martin got killed doing it, you
well,
know.
for me, the gap there is every conflict that has existed, maybe well, not since the dawn of time, but every civilized engagement of this sort has always had those two factors. And group one is angry and about to start shedding blood. Group two wants to have a conversation with you about what we can do to avoid this. You avoid the bloodshed by having a conversation. And when you're done having that conversation, you either have come to a result that everybody is unhappy with but accepts, or you create bloodshed. That's where the war is. That every war ever has started with a negotiation that eventually went sideways and turned into open conflict. There was absolutely no difference there in the 60s. Dr. King was trying to make people understand that we are all equal, we should all be treated equally, and that the rules apply to all of us. And the Black Panthers were saying, and when you've decided you don't want to do that for us, we're going to start murdering our way through you, and we're going to take it because we will have it one way or the other. And that's the situation we're in now. You have people who feel like their rights are being trampled on,
Yeah.
but they're actually the people doing the trampling. but they
And
don't see it that way.
and I'm finding my peaceful way is not working. Yet it's like showing up and talking and reasoning and forgiving and compromising. It ain't working right now.
It's not working
But,
right now because the
but
guy at the
it may
top doesn't
work.
want it.
Say
Down the
again.
road. Yes. Oh, because the guy at the top doesn't want for it to work.
The guy doesn't want it
If
for it.
if Trump is
Well, there's a huge
creating this
number of
problem,
people on the
the
right that
Republican
don't.
Party, yes, the Republican Party and their supporters in this issue don't want it, and they're not going to negotiate in good faith. So one way or the other, eventually, this is where it's going to go. This is where it's going to end. There is going to be some level of bloodshed because Trump currently believes he can take what he wants, and he's getting away with that. And at some point,
Yeah,
people are going to just say, you know what, no. And I don't look forward to that day. I don't know what happens around me when that happens, but I think it will happen. And all you can do when it happens is, well, no, you can stay out of it. You can stay in it as far as your own people are concerned, or you can go all in. And it becomes about the nation, not about yours. And that's, that's the military. There are some people that join the military to protect their nation, to bring freedom to the world, because that's what America is about. And then there are people who join the military because they need a college fund. And then there are people who join the military because they want to fight.
they
They
like
are looking for
violence.
a chance. Yeah, they love that. They're looking for the chance to shoot them some people. And that's you can't done any of them. Everybody is doing their part. Some people are standing up for their belief in our country. Some people are standing up for the opportunities that this country provides, and some people just need to fight. And you need all three of those to have one way or the other an effective military.
That's a good point. And you need all three of those to protect the Constitution. And of course, the right thinks they are protecting the Constitution somehow. They think they're protecting the country. And certainly the left, I believe, we're the better protectors of the country. And because I can see both sides, I probably won't engage in violence. I will probably shoot my mouth off as much as I can, as much as I can get away with, and support everything that legally can be done. But I don't think that has been very effective lately. So it's
I think
hard.
it's been ineffective.
Go
I
ahead.
think it's been ineffective because the left is as guilty of lying to their people as the right, just on a different level, not like on an unconstitutional level, but in a disingenuous, direct way. They are not here to impede the misdoings and overreach of the right. They are absolutely complicit in the laws that the right pushes through, gaining a footing because they haven't really resisted the right in 20 years. It was the end of Reagan was the last time that we had literal back and forth between the parties, the two parties that we have, and it was Reagan's refusal to follow basic rules of civility that allowed them to see that they could get away with that. If nothing else, with the air traffic controller strike.
Well, it works. This dramatic action,
Yes.
whether it's violent or not, it's very attractive to politics and gets everyone's attention. Well, we are out of time, and it's good to see that we have resolved this problem. It's always good to completely fix it. But
Yes,
it
let's
was
go
really a
outside
pleasure.
and bask in the bluebirds and the sunlight that we have created.
But it was a pleasure to have you here and have you speak your mind, and I thank you for it. We all need to stand up for the Constitution in the ways that we are the way we see it, the way we believe in it. I see it in a particular way. Mitch sees it in a particular way. But each of us, we're part of this big experiment, this experiment in democracy. And it's not like conflict is new. It's not like complete disagreement is a modern phenomena. It's always been. It's how our system and how we're going to manage the tremendous conflict that is here. And I think that's what Mitch is getting through to me on, is that it's here now. It ain't coming. It's here. The risk to the Constitution is here now. The risk to the younger generation is here now. And what we're going to do is important now. So, bless you, Mitch. Catch us next time on Halo, Love, and Country. And if you want to buy a book, I'm always pushing my book. Love and Country is a novel about two men who fall in love during the Vietnam War, during combat. And their movie, which Mitch helped make and is one of our best actors in, is also on Tubi and YouTube and Amazon and all those places. So, Love in Country it's called. See you next time.